What's up, guys? So we have some sweet glute information coming for you today. I, of course, am Joe Bennett, the hypertrophy coach, and this is Mayling, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, Mayling NG. You may see me on Wonder Woman, Scorpion King, and upcoming Suicide Squad manga. Play a lot of superheroes and warriors and martial artists. So look out for me.
Sweet. And we're going to be taking you guys through some glute stuff. We're going to have Mayling demoing, and hopefully you guys can learn some stuff and pick up some tips along the way. And check out both of our channels. Hit some like buttons, some subscribe buttons, share with some friends, and hopefully you guys enjoy the series.
Definitely subscribe to me. I know where you live. I'll come and find you.
She can beat you up. True story.
I will.
What is up, guys? We are here today with Mayling, and we're going to go over some glute stuff. So we're going to do a couple things. First and foremost, just talking about glutes. I'm going to say for everyone, just getting a little basic glute anatomy, like for every single muscle in the body. I think everyone should have some basic idea of origin and insertion and what joint it affects, because lots of people, when they're doing any body part, start to move other joints, move other things. And you got to realize, again, muscles basically only affect origin to insertion and pull between those 2 points. So we're going to go over a little basic anatomy just so people can hopefully visualize and understand what this muscle does, what it actually moves. We're going to talk about a couple little cueing things that you can basically practice outside of training, and then you can take to training as far as mind-muscle connection goes, because that's one of the biggest things. You can have all the best exercises writhen on paper, like, oh, you're supposed to do deadlift variations and squat variations and thruster variations. But if you can actually not feel your glutes, they're not going to help. Because one of the unique things about glutes and about your pelvis and your femur and your hip joint is that there's a lot of muscles that cross over those joints. So even if you were extending at your hip, you could be extending at your hip with your hamstrings, with your adductors, even some deep musculature as well too. So you want to make sure you're connected and focused on what's actually doing it. So these are probably the worst drawings ever of my glute stuff, but I just wanted something to get the basic idea. This doesn't have to be anatomically perfect. So this is kind of a weird shaped pelvis from behind. This is your femur, your big upper leg bone. And this is a view from the side. So if this is the same person looking at behind, this is their left side. And so this would be their left side here as well too. Just to get some understanding, I think this is the clearest one to understand. The joint is your femur sitting in your pelvis. So that is your hip joint. So for all intents and purposes, all glutes really do is they will move your femur relative to your pelvis or vice versa. So what I mean by that is if this pulls from here to here, if I'm up here in a state of hip flexion and this muscle contracts and shortens, I'm going to extend my hip. I could be standing in this position though, keep my femur still, and I could do this little posterior pelvic tilt and squeeze my glutes, meaning if I'm going from this arch and this pulls, I could actually rotate my pelvis and the femur stays still. So some people call that reverse action, but one way or the other, whether my pelvis is staying still and my femur is moving, that's can glutes produce that motion, or my femur stays still and my pelvis rotates. It's still basically just hip extension. It's just basically saying what's holding still and what's moving. So that's the main thing I want people to realize. And then this comes into play a little bit. We might discuss this in one of the last videos, just the nature of the fiber orientation, meaning that it's not purely kind of this straight up and down type thing. There is a little bit of this angle, and it does kind of attach to a lot of stuff on the side of your femur here. It attaches to your IT band, a lot of people talk about. And so the big thing there is it's kind of on the side of your femur as well. And all that really means is, one, if these muscles contract, there may be merit to having your leg out. So if you're doing isolated kickbacks, things like that, having it kind of come in this direction, more in line with the fibers would be a good thing. And I think this can also add to a component of a little bit of external rotation. So again, just imagine if you had a string attached to the outside of this bone and it pulls, it's going to want to make the bone do this, turn that way. It's tough to see two-dimensional, but hopefully that makes sense. And so again, that would be external rotation in the pelvis. So main thing we want to think about is, again, from the side view, is this hip extension-y type thing, but I just wanted people to have this kind of back view as well. And that's why you'll see some people involving adduction, involving external rotation. I think that can have a place, but the main thing you should be focusing on first and foremost in your workouts is things that do hip extension. And so we're going to talk about how do we make sure we're training glutes for the full contractile range. What are some of my favorite exercises? And so just realizing the full contractile range is somewhere of full hip flexion, depending on how flexible you are. So we're going to look at movements like maybe lunges, squat movements, leg press are very good ones to train those muscles fully lengthened. And then if we're looking at full hip extension, we're going to look at things like bridges, thrusters, or even doing deadlift variations where we have a band kind of loading the top as well too. So those would be things I consider a complete workout, training through full hip flexion extension. And then I'll even talk about then maybe where would you incorporate bands, cables, kickbacks, things like that as well too. That can have a place. Again, you just don't want it the mainstay of your programming. So first thing I was talking to Mayling about earlier is one of the most simple things. I don't know who created this term. Maybe it was Brent Contreras or people he trains, I don't know. But the first thing people need to learn how to do is actually just flex your glutes, which basically is just a matter of clenching or creating ugly butt is what the thing is saying. Duck butt, ugly butt. So all it means is as you're coming to top, a butt looks nice when it's relaxed. There's muscle, there's fat, that all looks good. When you clench it, it all kind of crumbles up and looks like an ugly butt. But that ugly butt feeling is a very important feeling. And realize all that is, if I told some guy or some gal, and I said, go ahead and flex your bicep, most people will fully shorten and fully contracted. It's very easy to feel a muscle fully shortened and fully contracted. So realize when you're standing, your hips are pretty extended, your glutes are near fully shortened. Being able to clench there is a very important place to feel the glutes fully shortened or fully contracted. I tell most people, if you can't clench and feel your glutes standing, you're going to have a hard time feeling it on any exercise if you can't do this position. So it sounds silly, but anytime I have someone working on their glutes, I always give them homework. So I'm like, basically just whenever you're standing, doing dishes, doing laundry, out and about, as long as no one's looking at you weird, just practice actually literally squeezing and holding your glutes from time to time. And so the reason that will be important is for anything, especially where we're going through full hip extension, again, like bridges, banded stuff, you want to be able to have a really good feeling of contracting those glutes in that fully shortened position, and making sure your glutes are finishing it and not your lower back. That's one of the big things is people finish movements that are supposed to be full hip extension with lower back extension. And then from there, once you can actually feel your glutes in this fully shortened position, that's how you want to start movements. So if you're doing the bottom of a deadlift, the bottom of a squat, so I'm doing a deadlift variation, you want to be able to initiate, so feel that glute squeeze first, and then feel that glutes contracting, pulling that pelvis in that position. So when I'm in the bottom of a deadlift, my pelvis is tilted forward, my glutes contract, and they're gonna pull your pelvis down towards your femur. And again, your whole torso and spine, if it's rigid, will come along for the ride. Where too many people at the bottom of deadlifts think about, I just gotta stand up. And if you just stand up, this can all be done with back musculature, whereas a proper contraction can be glutes first, and that just pulls your pelvis under, torso comes along for the ride. So I say all that stuff, play that all back once or twice. Those are really, really good things to practice even before you get into any of the exercise we're doing here. Make sure that you can feel your glutes standing. Make sure that you can feel them in this position. Even make sure you can feel them in this position. This is where it can be tough. The bottom of a squat, bottom of a leg press. And while you're learning movements that you're trying to feel your glutes, you really want to feel squeeze there first and then let things move. So that's one of the best ways you can make sure, is it coming from glutes? Is it coming from hamstrings or adductors? Hopefully is the goal you're not trying to have happen. And make sure, again, glutes are doing the majority of the work. So now I'm going to go through some of my, top 5-ish favorite exercises for glutes. And we're going to have Mayling demo a bunch of them, go through some stuff, and talk through why I like them and why I pick them. So hopefully that helps. If you guys are enjoying the start of the series and picked up some good tips there, don't forget to like, subscribe, thumbs up, leave some comments below. And until the next one, here we go.